Mayor Giuliani, you had a couple questions?
Yes, I do, sir. Just a few things that maybe I don't quite understand, but might be very helpful. The governor and the Secretary of State, I believe here today, certified the vote. It would seem to me that the one thing that you can be sure of, whether there are enough votes to overturn the election or not, or that the vote count is inaccurate, the one that presently exists. Is that right?
I believe that unless the questions that I raise get answered, you can't be confident of what the vote count actually is, and no one can.
But the present one is very questionable.
It is extremely questionable.
Not subject to a declaration under perjury that it's true and correct.
I agree.
Would you sign a declaration that it was true and correct in a statement to the federal government? I
absolutely would not. I would probably I would put myself at risk of going to prison.
And if I were your lawyer, I would tell you not to do it. Could you, based on your expertise, if in fact they hadn't been so hasty, or the legislature were to take the responsibility, could you conduct an audit in which you could come to a reasonable degree of certainty on how many illegal aliens voted?
It's good you asked that question. The federal government actually makes available a database of people, not necessarily who are citizens, but the opposite, people who are illegal aliens or green card holders, et cetera, and I actually have the document that a state would use to request that, to have that check done. And it's my intent, subsequent to this, because we've got other things flying around, but to pressure every state in the country to make this request of the federal government. And that request has to come from the Secretary of State's office. Now, what I don't know is, has the Secretary of State of this state ever made that request to bounce their voter list up against that to see who maybe is not qualified to cast a ballot? But that's an excellent question. That's what I think they should do.
Want to make a bet?
I'm not a gambling man.
Betting outside of the casinos here is illegal, sir.
Let's go across to Nevada, and we can do that. But seriously, with the number of illegal aliens in Arizona, in the millions, it's almost beyond doubt that some voted. And the margin is so small, 10 million. Wouldn't you be duty-bound to conduct that study before you certified a winner in this election?
I would agree, and it's so many things we can talk about that we shouldn't be happening at this hour. This is the kind of thing that the state should have done before Election Day, before a single ballot was cast. So remove the risk of contamination, and what's just as dangerous, I think, is the suspicion of contamination.
Right. Well, there's one study that was done that said 236,000 illegal aliens voted. I have no idea what their methodology was or how they produced it, but if you had time to do it, could that be done with a degree of certainty with regard to the number, even if it were an estimate?
Well, to figure out the precise number is difficult, but to hold your voter list against what this federal government will provide and match, you'd be able to subtract a substantial number of the illegal immigrants, or not just illegal immigrants casting ballots, but I think as prominent, which may increase your numbers, are people who are green card holders.
Yeah, non-citizens.
Other visas where they are here legally, but
it's a bigger universe, non-citizens.
It's a non-citizens who are permitted to vote. Yeah, it's a much bigger universe, and I could certainly do that analysis, but I could not do it without the signature of the Secretary of State on that letter to the federal government requesting access to that database, because as you know, as many of these people know, it's very hard to figure out who actually is a citizen and who is not, or who's entitled to vote and who is not.
And how about the number of felons who voted that were not entitled to vote? That's been estimated at over 200,000 also. Would an audit of the voting list be able to assist in determining an approximate number?
The mechanics, the technical mechanics of an audit are easy. Getting the data of all the felons who would be ineligible, and not just complete data, not just that data, but you need to have full names, dates of birth at least, and then have the reciprocal data from the state, which they should have, and if they don't, that's a huge problem, because we've encountered many cases where the state on their voter list, they've got like a blank, or they'll mark somebody as the default, like born on January 1st, the year 1900 or something. So to be able to conduct that analysis is easy, but to get the resources of the data behind it to conduct it may be challenging, but the state has a better capability of doing it than anyone else, and if you want to retain me to do that, I'd be happy to send you an invoice.
And how about people from out of the state voting?
That's an analysis we did run, but again, our numbers on extremely low side because we needed to have a high degree of confidence. The state itself could probably do a much better job of doing that analysis, and other states would be able to find more people who we couldn't discover having moved to other states based on real estate records, claiming the homestead tax exemption, which I think also established residency in another state, and just being able to do a much more vigorous match on voter lists, because again, we only got what the state gave us. We don't have what the state itself has.